Shalom Israel, Shalom Yasha'Allah, Shalom to the 12 tribes. Alright, Shalom to the brethren and to the sisters out there in this truth, right? Pushing this word and enduring affliction, right? Battling demons, alright, and enduring into the end. Alright, Shalom to the elders, right? And, Shalom to the 12 tribes of Israel, Bahashem Yahushua, right? And before we start, just want to call Allah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua. That's all praises to the Most High, Yahweh, in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahushua. All right. So, as you can see from the video, right? As you can see from the title of the video, right? We're going to be going into Easter just a little bit, right? So we're just going to go through the quick origin of Easter, right? Just touch on it, however much that the Spirit is willing. All right. And we're going to go through the precepts and prove that Easter is wicked according to the Bible. All right. So let's go to Acts 12:1. I already got it pulled up. And it reads, "Now about that time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James the brother of John with the sword. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread." So what's unleavened bread, right? What are the days of unleavened bread? So unleavened bread is a feast, right? It's called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? Let's get that real quick, right? Right, so let's get that real quick, actually. Leviticus 23, right? But actually, before we get that, let's just keep reading, right? Verse 4, "And when he had apprehended him and put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quarterings of soldiers to keep him," Slack if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but right, of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. So it says after Easter, right? And so that's where these people get that word Easter from, right? But let's look through the original language, right? So let's look through the Greek, right? It's the Greek text right here, right? So let's go through the concordance, right?
Strong's G 3957. Pascha.
Right, so Pascha, right? G 3957, right? So Pascha, right? Now that's a Greek word, but it's of Aramaic origin, right? So it says, "The Pascha sacrifice which was accustomed to be offered for the people's deliverance of old Egypt." Now what is that? Let's keep reading, right? "The Pascha lamb, i.e. the lamb the Israelites were accustomed to slay and eat on the 14th day of the month of Nisan, the first month of their year, in memory of the day on which their fathers, preparing to depart from Egypt, were bidden by the Most High to slay and eat a lamb, and to sprinkle their doorposts with its blood, that the destroying angel, seeing the blood, might pass over their dwellings. Christ crucified is likened to the slain Paschal lamb," right? So, and then it says the Paschal supper, and then the feast of the Passover. So that's what Pascha is. It's basically the Greek word, or in the English it will be Easter, but the Greek word for it will be Pascha, and in the Hebrew or the Aramaic, let's go through the origin, right? It says Passover, right? Sacrifice of Passover, right? Let's play that real quick.
Strong's H 6453. Pesach.
Right? Pesach, right? Right? So Pesach, right? So that's the Passover. So Easter just means Passover, right? Now, what is the Passover? Let's just go through it, right? Leviticus 23 and verse I'm sorry, at 4. These are the feasts of the Lord. So the Lord, if you didn't know, the Lord has feast days, right? The Lord has, for instance, the Lord has high holy days that he commanded his people to keep, all right? The Israelites. So days like we're about to go into it, but the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Dedication, but the Sabbath, these are feast days, right? Let's go to Leviticus 23 and 4. These are the feast days of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. So here are the feasts. Verse 5, here's the first one. In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahweh's Passover, right? So this is the Passover. Verse 6, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have an holy convocation, ye shall do no servile work therein, right? So basically, we're going into the same thing, right? Passover is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? And Feast of Unleavened Bread is 7 days, right? And the Passover is just 1 day, but that's where they get the idea of Passover from. I mean, Easter, right? No, not the idea, but the word Easter, right? But really, the concepts and idea of Easter, right? The traditions have nothing to do with the Most High at all, or with the Bible, right? So let's go into the origins real quick, right? Origin of Easter, right? Right here, right? This is Ishtar. So if we look up Ishtar, right? If we look up Ishtar, this is Ishtar right here, right? So Ishtar would be what? A so-called goddess, right? An ancient so-called goddess that people actually used to worship, right? And are still worshiping today, but they don't know it, right? Through Easter, right? So let's read this. Easter was originally the celebration of Ishtar, of this goddess, right? This deity, the Assyrian and Babylonian goddess of fertility and sex. Her symbols like the egg and the bunny. So in Easter, if we look up Easter, right? If we look, right? We look up Easter, and then we look through the images, and it's a whole bunch of this, right? The eggs and the baskets and the bunny rabbits, right? But rabbits don't even lay eggs, right? They don't even lay eggs. So what does a bunny rabbit and an egg have to do with Yahweh Shah or Christ, right? It has nothing to do with them, right? It has to do with Ishtar, right? We're going to read that, right? Her symbols like the egg and the bunny. So her symbols, one of her symbols was the egg and the bunny, right? Two of her symbols were the eggs and the bunny. Why? We're going to go through it. Where and still are fertility and sex symbols. Or did you actually think eggs and bunnies had anything to do with the resurrection? Right? Because it doesn't. Right? Because look, eggs and bunnies, right? Bunnies, they have a lot of basically offspring, right? So that represents the fertility, right? And the eggs represents the sex, right? And then it says, after Constantine decided to Christianize the empire, Easter was changed to represent Jesus. But at its roots, Easter, which is how you pronounce Ishtar, is all about celebrating fertility and sex, right? So this is a Babylonian goddess, right? Even if you go to, right? Yeah, and she has multiple names, right? And even in Jeremiah, it talks about Tammuz. Tammuz is supposedly her son, right? Let's get that, right? Weeping for Tammuz. Right? Ezekiel 8 and 14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. So there were women weeping for Tammuz. Tammuz is supposedly Ishtar's son. Right? So, all this been going on for a long time, right? And our people are just celebrating and indulging in this wickedness, right? Let's see what Christ thought about this, right? See what Christ thought about this. Let's go to Mark 7 and 6. Mark chapter 7 verse 6. He answered and said unto them, Well hath Elias prophesied to you hypocrites, as it is written, This people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Because a lot of these people that celebrate Easter, not the Passover, but celebrate the pagan origins of Easter, right, with the eggs and the bunny and stuff, right? They're trying to do it for the Most High. They're trying to do it for God, right? Some may not know the actual origins of Easter, but nonetheless, they're trying to do it for the Most High, right? But they're honoring them with their lips, but their heart is far from the Most High, right? Why? Because what? Because verse 7, howbeit in vain do they worship me, right? So because a lot of these Christians and Catholics, right, they try to worship the Most High, but it's in vain, right? Teaching for doctrines the commandments of men, right? Because Easter, these pagan ideals of Easter, right? The pagan ideas of Easter is not found in the scriptures at all, right? It's a doctrine of men, the commandment of men, right? Verse 9, and he said unto them, full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition. And this is just a tradition of men, right? This is just a tradition of men, right? It's not of the Most High, right? Let's go to Colossians. Let's go to Colossians 2 and 8. Colossians 2 and 8. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Mahashiach. Right? So, this is just the tradition of men. It's just the tradition of men. Right? And there's more, more in-depth videos, but I just put up what I could. Right? And with that, I'd like to give, call Allah Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahshua. I'd like to say Shalom. What the water. Alright? Shalom.